can talk about. Chop it up, chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up, chop it up, chop it up, chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show, we about to chop it up. Come to the show, we got some things we can talk about. Come to the show, we about to chop it up. Come to the show, we got some things we can talk about. Chop it up, chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up, chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up, chop it, chop it, chop it up, chop it up, chop it. We got some things we can talk about.
Good evening and welcome to the Chop Shop. I'm your host, as always, blessed and privileged that we get the honor and opportunity to be able to come to you. Pastor Marvin McKenstry Jr. here live and ready to have another pertinent conversation. We took some time off last week to relax and refresh. Shaka was out in Colorado with some kids. Shaka, come on the screen. My right hand and my left hand, my main man, always on the ones and twos, technique 1200s, because anything else is not excellent.
Negative. What's good,
brother? That's a negative. Man, listen, I'm good. That's what I can tell you right now, man. I'm on fire today. We was out in the Cherry Hill community with my good friend and brother, Dr. Ervin Hanna, and he invited us out, man. He was doing his regular food giveaway, man, and we impacted and contacted and connected with so many people in the Cherry Hill community. This is my second week in a row actually being out in that community, man, and I was excited about it. And we had an amazing time in the community with those great residents.
Listen, man, I saw the pictures, and the crew you had out there, number one was A1. So
yeah, man, listen, they were so serious with it, bro. They was running across the street. If they saw you walking down, you know that's right there where the shopping center is. So if they saw you walking down the street, hey, we got jobs over here. We were sitting right on the only two bus stops in Cherry Hill. So it was a good setup, man. And we definitely going to be doing a lot more. That I've been saying to all of my viewers, if your church or community organization is planning something in the near future, you want to just inbox me, because I'm the person that's in charge of our strategic reintegration plan, which reintegration is talking about getting back to the community and getting the community back to us. So you want to make sure that you inbox me so we can get your event on our calendar. I got 6 young stallions on my team, man, that are awesome. I'm finally using my brain more than I'm using my body in this workforce development business, and it's serving me really well, bro.
That's what's up, man. You're doing good work, Marv. You're doing, you know, and good is just like, that's a whack word for what you do, but you know.
Man, to God be all the glory, man. To God be all the glory. I got three things we're gonna do preliminarily tonight, because we always gonna make sure that we push the Stop the Beef hotline. I need y'all to like, love, and to definitely share. Tag people in the comments that you think should hear this conversation tonight, because we've been talking about Baltimore, but tonight we're going to have a lot of discussion around that 21215. Hey, Dr. Vaughn. Hey, Mama Brenda. Good to see you as always on the broadcast. But this Stop the Beef hotline is a real thing, man. We have been doing more intervention. And I'm talking recently doing a lot of intervention. And although the devil still tries to rear his head, man, we are still clear that while he may nick out here, we gonna crush his head. So I need everybody, if you know anybody that's in a space where you think they might be in some danger or have something like this going on, contact us on those 2 numbers. There's always a man there prepared to answer the phone. And when they answer, we coming to the rescue. We've paid off debts. We've bought plane tickets, train tickets, anything that we need to do to make sure that we can make sure that another life is not lost. The Baltimore Peace Agreement continues to circulate throughout Baltimore. We're getting the real ones to sign off. I don't want you don't see no phone numbers or nothing on this, because when we take this to the community, the people who are in harm's way and who are doing harm, we getting them to sign off on this thing. We negotiating peace treaties all across the city. Like, we're doing some great work. For this, we need your prayers. We need you to still be praying for us and to be helping us out to make sure that we can spread this great message. I don't know if you got the 2 things that I sent you, Shaka, because I sent them kind of late.
Yes, you did, but you know, it's all good.
One of them is a flyer. This flyer right here, you see community with the unity big. Every year since I've been past that Victory House Worship Center, we've done back to school drive and all that sort of thing. And I'm going to tell you the truth, I was a little weary and wasn't feeling up to it this year. And two things happened. A wonderful partnership with my sister, Letitia Leak, the wife of the great man of God, Bishop Brandon Leak, and their church, Impulse Church, hooked up with our church. And we've unified all 5 of the surrounding neighborhoods. So this year, it won't just be a Po Homes thing. We went and got the proper permits and everything. We blocking off the 800 block of Lexington Street, and we serving Callaway Road, Po Homes, Poppleton, Vintage Gardens, and the towns at the terraces. All of that we used to just call the terrace. Amen. But we serving everybody. I need your donations on this. Our Cash App is $VHW Center. We're going to get that kite flying, and I want it to roll throughout the show. Donations to our back to school event, $VHW Center. All right. It's going to happen on August 21st from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the blessing is everybody I've reached out to that is a service provider has decided that they want to help out free of charge. The armed security company, free of charge. The DJ, free of charge. Y'all, we are being blessed because we being a blessing. We want everybody in that community to be blessed and to be prepared on that day so the children can be prepared to return to school. That's a capital VHWC. And then the rest, the enter is lowercase. Thanks, Shaka. All right. So with that being said, I got a dedication tonight. You saw kind of me come outside of my comfort zone and request prayer on Facebook. And I'm still soliciting your prayers for me and my family. That ugly thing that I stay at war with, I'm sure it hates me. I hate it. And that's murder. Murder hates Marvin McKenstry because Marvin McKenstry is doing tangible things to try to stop it. And I hate murder because it is ravaging our city, 300 murders a year. And every year in the last 5 years, it's touched me in a very personal way. And this year is no different. This young man, this handsome, squared away young man that you see is my cousin, Nicholas Lee. And yes, I said murder. I don't care what they doing. I need everybody praying for justice and praying for healing for my family. The justice is because the police department is not moving expeditiously in this investigation into this case. It's not moving fast enough. I've talked to some of my friends who are great legal minds. It's almost as though they're giving protections to this security officer that shot my cousin in cold blood. But he's not a police officer, right? That was one of the first things they said because they wanted to make sure that the police weren't involved. So I'm soliciting your prayers tonight for healing and for justice. And we dedicating this show because it happened right in the 21215. And we're going to be talking to a brother who is a great advocate for the 21215. This young man you see on the screen walked the streets with me. He's a member of the Nation of Islam. He's my blood cousin. He walked the streets with me trying to prevent violence. And it's not right that violence, even in the context of a rogue security officer, would come back and take his life. So we soliciting your prayers, and we need to make sure that things are done swiftly in our pursuit of justice, and pray for us through our healing process. With that being said, I got to bring the man to the stage. Me and this brother met by a sister named Kimberly the Greek. Kim is she's like me. I call her my sister. She's like me. We're connectors. We know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And I never forget the day we were standing on the corner of St. Paul and 25th Street, right across the street from Terra Cafe. And she said, bro, come here. You got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy. His name, Chris Ervin. He was running for the 5th District Council seat. But I was quick to figure out that this brother was not a politician. This brother is not a politician. He just wanted to be in that space because he is a change agent. He is a go hard in the hood change agent. While balancing a life of course, having to have a job to feed his family, he's been the proprietor to a program called the Lazarus Rite. He's been helping brothers who have no other recourse get a CDL driver's license over the last few years to be able to better change their situation by having a career-oriented job. and still remains a boots on the ground advocate for change, primarily in the 21215 area code or the 5th Council District. I'm talking about the one and only, my man, Mr. Christopher Ervin. Welcome to the Chop Shop. Thank you for being with us tonight, bro.
Thank you for having me, Brother Marvin and Brother Shaka. I appreciate being here.
Man, you were one of the critical and consistent voices, and I was excited about the outreach and the opportunity to have you on, because we've been talking to people who, although they have run for office, has not stopped your quest for justice or your boots on the ground advocacy, even though you didn't obtain that seat during the election. Talk to us about what drives you in a city like Baltimore, where you're really not even from.
No, I'm originally from the Bronx, but just always have in touch with my people. I refuse to be divided by the lines on the map that we didn't draw. And so the same way as if we went to a family reunion down south or in the Midwest, when we go to wherever our people are, we know what type of food is going to be there. We know what type of music is going to be there. We are in rhythm. We are in that vibration. And so coming to Baltimore, I didn't feel like I was going somewhere else. I felt like I'm going to a predominantly Black city. I'm definitely going to my people. And so whatever is going on in the city, I'm always, my life experience just teaches me to meet people and build with them based on what we have in common. It's easy to find the differences, but who's willing to dig in to find what we have in common?
That's got to become the most important thing, because whether you're in New York, Chicago, Baltimore, every urban city seems to be having real big problems. And one of those big problems is crime, murder, but more so the lack of representation by those who sit in the seats. Now, I'm going to get right to the nitty gritty and get to the dirt of it, because my cousin was killed in the 21215, much like the cousin of the sitting council person. And the city council person hasn't called for justice. There's been no vigil where he's come out to walk, and I have no problem saying your name, Isaac Yitzley Scheifler. This has been, you've been his nemesis over the last few years. Talk to us about that 5th district seat and the 2 Park Heights, man. You got to unmute him, Shaka.
Give me clear.
It's the fan. The fan is putting a little bit of choppy background in every time it oscillates across where your screen is.
Shut that off.
Other than that, we got you good.
We take care of that very easily. Are you
all
able
right.
to hear me now?
Yeah, we good now.
So there's a very disparate situation here in Northwest Baltimore. Historically, and since I've been in Baltimore, I've been living in Northwest Baltimore. Initially, I lived down on Calvert Street in the 1200 block, and for the rest of that time now, almost coming up on 30 years, I've been in Northwest Baltimore. Obviously, as everybody knows, we have a large Jewish population, but what is less discussed is the large West Indian population, Jamaicans, Trinis, and American Black folks. The 5th district is actually a predominantly Black district. It's this aura, this mentality of who doesn't have power and why not. So for me, it's not about taking power away or holding anybody else down. It's just about us standing up. Historically, where are the instances of crime? And that's where you would think these are the areas that need the most response. These are the areas that need the most visible and present representation. And throughout all this time, we've simply been taken advantage of. Now again, it's not to point at one group or individuals. It's just time for us to stand up and represent ourselves, but also demand what we should have in our communities. When it comes to our communities, everybody wants to be safe. Nobody has a corner on wanting to be safe. It's our communities where we all know Miss Betty. Miss Betty may not want to sit on her porch or be scared to come on her porch because of them boys on the corner. We talk about people that was scared to talk to. And when
that's real.
you actually engage with these brothers, a lot of time, these brothers want to work. Even now, I pull up, I'm in the truck, and I just jump straight out. I say, I'm not trying to get you brothers' business, and just forgive me for just pulling up like this. But I just want to know if y'all interested in working. And the response, as you well know, because that's how you roll, the response is always, yeah, what you got? What you working with? Man, I'm looking for something. So it's really about being somebody who they can relate to. I've been through all of whatever anybody's been through, so I'm no better than anybody. I'm no superhero. I'm not trying to be anything, politics, blah, blah, blah. It's just a matter of trying to be the example that I always look for when I was on the corner or in the trenches, so to speak. So I'm just trying to be a conduit for people because they were conduits for me. Again, I'm no better than anybody. I had the opportunity, and I was fortunate enough to have brothers and sisters come across my life when I needed them the most.
In the predominantly black 5th District, Park Heights Community 21215 area code, there's a lack of representation for Black people. And we see that historically, the upper Northern Parkway side, and again, I'm not here to divide anybody, but I'm just stating the facts. What needs to happen to make sure that the predominantly Black district gets better representation to its Black constituents?
We have to have engagement, but not just the type of engagement that just stands in front of people and talks at them. We have to have the engagement that educates people on their circumstance, not me standing in front of you, educating you on who I am. Me teaching people like when I talk to brothers, especially, we're on the chop shop. Let's chop it up.
Let's chop it up.
If they've been in that cell, they understand. I tell them, if I was to walk in your cell every day at the same time and smack your brains out, at some point, you're going to do something different to get a different result. And so in the community, it's the same scenario. If you can complain that you have not been getting what you think your community deserves, if you feel that someone else is getting all the attention and you're not, it's up to you to do something different to change that outcome. And in that way, people understand it because, like I said, how the conversation is framed is relatable to them. They're like, yeah, ain't nobody gonna do nothing to me. I'm saying, well, in this regard, have that same energy. Don't let somebody do something to you. Stand up and stand for yourself. Bring your brothers and your sisters, each one bring one, and start to educate each other on the mechanisms of politics. For the most part, and especially people that have been incarcerated or just in general, stay away from those circles. They say, well, I'm not into politics. The first thing I say to them is, let me tell you something. If we're on the block, if we're around the way, and you see certain dudes talking low on the corner, that's politics. We call it hood politics. And in the prison, same thing. When there's conversations or actions going on that set the policies for that environment. And all I would suggest to you is that the same thing governs the environment that we live in, except we're not the ones in control. We're not the bosses in those spaces, and we can be as it relates to our own community. Malcolm X said in 1964 that we were politically immature, that we didn't understand that we should be the bosses in our own community. We should control the politics in our communities. It's not we don't need to control the politics in other people's communities, but where we are the predominant representation of who lives there, who spends money there, whose tax revenue is spent there. We should be the voices in those spaces, and we should demand to be the voices in those spaces, and that's done by way of the vote. So it really is about the engagement process, the education process, and people should understand. Look for who's consistent. Everybody shows up right before an election, but where are you in the
man? Listen,
between those gaps, and not about just showing up. Show me the outcomes. If you spend money, you want to see what you spent your money on. So when you spend your vote, see what you got for it.
We're having a little bit of difficulty with your audio. We can still hear you, but it's starting to sound a little scrambled. That piece that you just brought to bear, to me, is one of the most important pieces. The reality that we have people that know how to play the election season while we have people like you that are consistent, and yet for some reason we can't get that seat. When you begin to start to look at the lack of organization amongst our people, what would you say the state of community organizing from the Black perspective is in the 21215?
Well, I got a really bad connection. If you can hear me, I'll keep going.
I can hear you slightly.
Should I disconnect?
Yeah, try to disconnect and reconnect. Yeah, try to see if you can use your MacBook, but use Chrome instead of Safari.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I'll be right back.
All right. So for our listening audience, this is a good time for you to throw your questions in. If it's anything that you want to add to this conversation, we're talking tonight to Mr. Christopher Ervin, who is a resident of the Northwest Baltimore community. He's run 2 times for the 5th District, and he advocates greatly for the 21215, or what we know as the Park Heights, Reisterstown, Garrison, that community where we know there appears to be 2 Park Heights, one side of Northern Parkway versus the other. We're going to get back to that conversation. But while we do have a minute, as you're getting your questions loaded up, I want to talk to you about next week's show. Next week's show is going to be another firecracker. We are going to be sitting down talking to Mr. Ray Kelly. Ray is a major advocate for police reform in Baltimore, who is just ending, his tenure with the monitoring team. He wasn't a part of the monitoring team, but he was in charge of the community arm of the monitoring team. And he is on to some things that are a little bit more independent, where he can be as vocal as he wants and needs to be about the state of the consent decree. Recently, he was interviewed by NBC, and he had some very candid things to say about the consent decree. And we are now in a space where we need to be looking at, is this consent decree helping reduce crime? Because one of the things they sold it to us on was, that the relationship building will help reduce crime. And there's no better person to have that conversation with from a community worker standpoint than Ray Kelly. His work on developing a similar report to the one that the DOJ put out is the only one that the Department of Justice actually acknowledged and recognized in duality to theirs, which produced the consent decree. So we're excited about that. We got my man Christopher Ervin back with us now, and we're talking about Baltimore, the state of our city. We got I have a hard time saying new because we see some of the same people in new positions, and in the community that you love and advocate for greatly, we don't even see a new person. We see the same person in that seat of city council. My question prior to us needing to get you reconnected was, when you look at the fact that Upper Northern Parkway is organized enough that even though it's not a predominantly Jewish community, they can continue to win that seat. Lower Northern Parkway, although there are a bunch of programs and people who say that they're advocates and service providers, we can't get the community unified enough to take power or take that seat from the person who's winning it over and over and over again, even with your advocacy and your activism. What would you say the state of activism and advocacy in that community is from the perspective of a leader who look at the other leaders? Are we just that divided?
So, yes, we are divided.
You sound great, man.
Yeah, this is better, right?
Yeah.
We're absolutely divided. But we also have to understand, much like military strategy or football strategy and plays, there's intentional division. And so it's not simply that we're not organized. There's, once organization seems to be happening, there's intentional endeavors to undermine that coming together. And that's just the strategy of communities and politics. So it's understandable. It doesn't have to be acceptable, but it's understandable. The quality of representation is based on the fact that so oftentimes it is the interest of other people that backs the candidates. And so, at different times, you'll see a whole array of people running for offices with the intention of undermining, the concentration of one particular demographic of people. Let me not dance around it. To
Come
undermine
on,
the
man.
black vote.
Come on, man. I've been waiting for it all night.
That's what it is. I want to be. This is just me. I'm going to always be appropriate. That doesn't mean I'm gonna dance around the issue. Yeah. So there's always an intention to win, and so to win, you undermine the other side. Football, you run blitzes, you run stunts, you do what you have to do to win. That's understandable. And so for me, I always want to get to the issues. I always want to see us build at our state level. Through the 21215 and over in this corner, 21207, we have Liberty Heights, we have Park Heights. Liberty Heights and Ricestown Road. These two are also state roads. Regardless of the fact that they're inside the Beltway, they're still state roads. That gives us the advantage of having some state funds that can be coming to develop our corridors. But see, in Black communities, we always get discussions about single developments, a store or a house. But when you look at, say, Eastern Avenue or O'Donnell Street from the harbor all the way out to O'Donnell Heights, you get the entire corridor of development. What does that do? That improves the equity of the homes throughout the communities along that entire stretch. And so when we look at those types of differences, comparing apples to apples, our representation has always come up short. When you look above Northern Parkway, Park Heights looks totally different. There's not a liquor store or a storefront on Park Heights above Northern Parkway at all. Zero.
At all.
But below Northern Parkway on Park Heights, they
Every
don't
corner.
stop. They don't stop. Now we're talking about the will of the community. When the community comes together and they put certain community-based business agreements in place, the will of the community can determine what type of businesses are allowed to come into that community and which ones aren't. But it's about the education process again.
And that's what I want to talk about, because I keep throwing it at you where we talking about the lack of what you say, because this is what I look at as the stakeholders in the community. You got the business owners, and most of the business owners in our community don't look like us. All right. So they're stakeholders, but they're not particularly us. But when you start talking about residents, when you start talking about pastors and other clergy people and all, it seems to be a lot of leadership. And especially up and down that particular area, because you got the Park Heights Community Health Alliance, Park Heights Renaissance. You got all of these why don't we have a level of unity that you would think would come out of all of these different stakeholders that look like me and you? And I want you to be candid, brother. Because
the money comes from the other side. Money backs voices. We don't have leaders, we have voices. And behind those voices, what supports those endeavors are monies that come from the other side. And that money is going to always work to its agenda and not necessarily to our agenda.
So we acquiesced our power for for the bag.
Absolutely. But see, and this is why I start with us being a predominantly Black district, because that stigma of who has the money. And so that's the Wizard of Oz. But again, just like with the Wizard of Oz, when you look behind the curtain, it's a different story. The fact of the matter is, no matter how much money is there, no matter how many billboards can go up or how many people you can pay in this community to pull down my stuff, there's still more votes in this part of the community than there are in another part. And at the end of the day, that's what decides what's going to happen. And so beyond the vote itself, then how do we discourage people from voting? In fact, we talked about we'll talk about the election in 2020, when all of the locations had been closed down and suddenly Northwest High School was reopened. Even though we had always voted at the training center, they said, oh, well, because of the conditions of the training center, we can't vote there. And yet the police are still in there. The fire department is still in there, but the conditions prohibited us from voting. These are the types of tactics that undermine the Black vote, the Black participation, the Black engagement, the Black education. You look at Black communities everywhere. It's hard to find social space that we can access to even get in and get together and have conversations that educate the people.
So that the people can be informed. Who are the gatekeepers to those processes?
That's the political process. So the council person, your council person should be the biggest advocate for every community across their individual district. So regardless of what district it is, you count on your council person to be the biggest advocate for whatever's going on. And so when a voting location needs to be opened in a certain area of town, whether it be East Baltimore, Berea, or Monuments, wherever, you will need to go through your council person or another individual that can take it to the state level, the Board of Elections, and can advocate for a location to be open. Like I said, the training center was closed down. We'd always voted at the training center. People were even able to vote right over here, Calvin Rockwell. All of these locations were taken away, and Northwest was opened up after they had just been closed as a school. The former Northwest High School. I should have been better prepared and had a map ready for you, because you have to see it on the map to realize how far into the
I know how far it is. I know where Northwest is.
Almost in the county. It is in no way central to this district to have been the only in-person voting location.
And I think that is it's what, 2 blocks away from the county line?
Absolutely.
2 or 3 blocks away from the county. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And these are the kinds. So this is the thing, that because these are the kinds of tactics. When did this announcement go out? Why wasn't there advocacy around making sure? And I know COVID was the excuse for a lot of things. Like I'm really hoping to see what the electorate is going to look like. The electorate is going to look like on the other side of the pandemic, because the pandemic literally kind of shielded a lot of this disenfranchising behavior that happened in the Black community, and we had no voices that had the platforms. Because I know well enough to not say nobody was talking about it, but we didn't have voices with the platforms to be able to call this stuff out.
So we had an unprecedented situation that has gotten no discussion. We've seen people who, for the first time in their adult lives, did not vote, because remember, while people were being told not to go into public spaces, they were also being told to put their vote in the mail, while we were dealing with people who never got ballots, never received ballots. No one was fighting for that. Remember, not only we're talking about the council race, but we also had 3 delegates and a senator. There should have been a much bigger advocacy, just as a democracy, to make sure that we ensure the participation of everybody who wants to engage the process. And we didn't see that type of fight. I had to speak to I forget, his name escapes me, the Board of Elections, Armstead Jones. I spoke to him myself and asked, who made the determination to open Northwest High School? He said, oh, well, everybody wants a voting location in their neighborhood. I said, I didn't ask you for a voting location in my neighborhood. I asked you, who made the determination? What was that determination based on, criteria-wise? In other words, what determined where you will put this location? Again, in no way central to the district so that there was equal access to it. It is in the most far northwest corner of the district. And so it's not based on, well, there's more people in a concentrated area. Again, this is not the predominant makeup of the district. I want to be clear. This is not about taking a vote away from any group of people. The process should be available to all equally. And just as a point of where to put the votes, I mean, even that day as I'm at the polls, and I get it's a function of what was being said as far as pick up votes for people in your community to drop them off. But there should be something wrong with me being able to watch one person drop 15, 20, 30 ballots in this box at one time.
Man, listen.
You know, all of the questions are obvious. We don't know who filled those out.
The distraction of national politics, I always say that there are parts of me, because I do understand the advantages of it as well. There are parts of me that wish we did not share the same time of election as the national elections, because there's such a great distraction from all of the banter, especially with this last election, that we have. I know a brother very intelligent. I'm talking highly intelligent. Spends most of his day, because he works for himself, in a home-based business, listening to MSNBC, C-SPAN, those media outlets, so he can sit down and have a conversation about national politics with you all day. It saddened me when I sit down and had a conversation with him and he didn't know who a city council person was, right? Do you think it would be beneficial or harmful if the city elections were in concert with maybe the state elections and the things that impact local politics the greatest versus being in alignment with the national election? Because I think it's just a great distraction.
I agree. And unfortunately, being in an entertainment-based society now, that distraction is what drives people to the polls in different instances. And so in those off elections, the people, the amount of people that come out is said to drop drastically. A lot of people came out to vote for or against former president. I don't even,
that guy,
yeah, that dude. So a lot of people came out to vote for or against him, which is everyone's right to vote for or against who they want to. But that's what drives the dynamic. I think I just want to go back to that issue that I touched on, having social space in a community. And what I mean by that is not just the space itself, literally, but even the parking lot, which encourages people to drive to a place and then participate in the. So we see what that does when it's a church. But think about in our community where we've lost rec centers, where we've lost community centers, where we've lost the ability to have space where we can form groupthink. Groupthink is not a bad term. It is just a term, like a tool is just a tool, but it becomes a weapon when you hit somebody in the head with it. Group space is you think about in a predominantly white community where they still have 4-H clubs, where they still have Rotary clubs and all of these different clubs. And then on the 4th of July, you see the parade that comes down the center of town on Main Street, because that shows the groupthink of that particular community. So when an outsider moves in their community and does something that's out of their norms, they immediately are lambasted and let people, the people let them know that's not how we do things. In the Black community, though, they've stripped us of group space, of social space. And so they undermine the groupthink. And then we wonder why everybody's doing everything on an individual basis. We have to find a way to come back together as a collective to decide what our norms and our norms, our mores and norms are going to be, and how we're going to do things. We always talk about, we old school. We know what it means when the lights come on. I mean, get your ass home. We know what it is. And like I said, I've been here almost 30 years, but I know the history of Baltimore. My daughter's parents, grandparents, all Dunbar people at 1600 block of Biddle Street. I know what the history of washing down the marble steps is. But the fact that we all know it is a form of groupthink. So what are we supposed to be? How do we get back to being that community?
You are one of many people that I can have this conversation with that really understands the dynamic. Is the question, how do we get back, or who or what group leads us back? Is it a leadership issue? Is it an issue of direction? I don't believe it's an issue of direction, because I have these conversations and I hear these conversations all the time. I recently reached out and I'll talk very thin about it to some brothers that I know could help me bring about what do you call it? A no shoot kind of move in a 4-block radius that with or radius with 4 boundaries, 4-block radius with 4 boundaries. That is a place that's very dear to me. And it's caused me to have to go to some people that aren't particularly the pastor. They're not particularly. Is it a lack of leadership? Is it a lack of innovative thinking? I want to hear from you. What do you believe the hindrances are? Because we know the solutions.
Is absolutely a lack of leadership. But again, back to the strategies and tactics. We always mention that when we had leaders, they were intentionally taken out. And so in the aftermath of that, you have to undermine the ability to even grow leaders. Back to the social space. When you don't have the spaces to create leaders. My daughter's 16 years old. I take her to everything with me. But the thing is, when you have these kinds of spaces, we're able to grow leaders from within. There should be no reason that a candidate has to introduce themselves to a community. You should know who they are because they came up in the community. They come from, you know their background, you know how they were raised. They know what you expect from them. But when you don't have those spaces, you have to settle for anybody that pops up in front of you. And we also have to take responsibility for our lack of engagement or our lack of participation and seeking knowledge and demanding standards. You can't just come to my community meeting. If you haven't been coming, don't ask me to come before the election. I'm not letting you come in. I'm not letting you speak. You
and I listen, I am firm in that way as a leader. My personal conviction as a pastor is to not endorse candidates and to give them a platform, but to create an educated voter base. I am a voter, but the sanctity of the voters booth is something that holds dear to me. So I don't even share with people how I vote because I recognize I have a sphere of influence. When we begin to talk about those kinds of things, how do we then, I guess, re-educate a miseducated leader as it pertains? I'm dealing with a situation right now, literally, where one particular leader, the social, political group in the neighborhood has carved one leader out and trying to put energy behind this one leader. And because they look established, that one leader's eyes are so big that now they're trying to move outside of the 5 or 6 collective leaders that was actually building a constituency that could stand strong in that community. Talk to the leaders, man. Talk to the leaders.
At the end of the day, like I said, the best marketing for your representation. I personally, I don't like the term leader. Because as a representative, you're one of and not one above. You're supposed to come from. You're selected by that group or that body to speak for the body because you're one of. So the more that you are present and engaged, the less you'll have to speak for yourself when the time comes. You think about, just imagine a court case. The more that you're known, the less you have to speak and defend yourself. Your body of work, I mean, that's a well-known, saying. Your body of work speaks for itself. And so the fact that, like I said, every time we have political or anything community related and people have to consistently be introduced, that in and of itself should be a red flag, should be a problem. And we have to stop letting people come into our communities and introduce themselves. If you aren't known to us before we need you, then you aren't who we need.
Absolutely. You're on Live with the Chop Shop. We come to you every Thursday at 6 p.m. We talking to my good friend and brother, Mr. Christopher Ervin tonight, who is a great advocate and activist in the 21215, Park Heights, Ricerstown, Liberty Heights, all of that community. And we are at my next conversation piece for us is one that has to do with what appears to be, according to the census, this mass exodus that's happening in Baltimore. And I had a very interesting conversation with someone who I love and that I know loves Baltimore about how this specifically, these census numbers, whether it's a lack of participation in the census or whether there's really an exodus from the city, impacts Black Baltimore. When you as a person hear the continual decline of residency in Baltimore, how does that make you feel as a person who's still here fighting?
It disgusts me. I'm gonna be honest, Marv. It disgusts me because throughout the days, I move about the city all day in the waste industry and trucking and transportation. I move about the city all day. I'm able to see in communities where there is intentional investment. And what I mean by that is when something is built, we see the big cranes come in, the cranes that they have to excavate before they lay the foundation and then build the crane that's going to build the building. Versus the communities where you just see people put up a scaffold, paint a mural, and rehab something. Intentional investment. That says what's going to be done for the long term versus what are we doing? Just do a little something for right now. That issue of murals, which first of all, I love the artists. I love art, the artists, the talent is incredible. I want to always salute them. But we have to realize, look at the communities across Baltimore City right now. All of these predominantly black spaces that are being inundated with murals, but have not seen any substantial financial investment versus other communities. Look at around the harbor, how fast they threw up. Baltimore didn't have no skyscrapers. Tallest thing in Baltimore was the projects that they tore down over there. Now you have skyscrapers downtown that were built within the time that we're still trying to get little grants to do little community projects in predominantly black spaces. We
call it hush money. We call it hush money. We're gonna commission your project and your mural, and we celebrate this stuff.
The same thing they would have sandblasted down and locked you up if they would have caught you doing not too long ago. They now allow you to do because we cheer that in place of demanding, because there are still homeowners in these communities that have a tax revenue basis. There are still public funds. Let me say this real quick.
You got time, brother.
Both city council and state representatives are legislators. The only two jobs that legislators have is to address policy either through creation or amendment and the allocation of public revenue. So finding projects to fight for public money at the state level to be allocated to these things in these communities. These are the only two jobs. Forget that whole constituent services. That is the mayor's concern. And that's why all of these agencies, DPW, DOT, are under the mayor's office. Yes, that city council voice can bring attention to an issue as an advocate for each community across their district, but that's not their job. Their job is to deal with policy and the allocation of public revenue. And in predominantly black communities across Baltimore City, we are not seeing the allocation of the public monies towards community development. We're not seeing it. And then we try to, well, why are people like this? Why are people like that? Look at the environment that they're forced to exist in.
We got about 12 minutes left. We coming down the stretch, and I gotta throw this question at you, bro. We're nearing 8 months into, and I won't talk about any particular office, but we're 8 months into new representation as a result of that last election. Where do you believe we are as a city, and where you see us heading?
I asked people to look at DC, Washington, DC. Washington, DC was losing population incredibly until they got Marion Barry out of office. Marion Barry, who was all about developing that predominantly black space, formerly known as Chocolate City. Formerly, at one time, DC was almost 73% black. After Marion Barry was gotten out of office, and after the gentrification began, Washington, D.C. is now somewhere around 43% black. I've always said that Baltimore should have been Atlanta before Atlanta was Atlanta. We have to hold people accountable for not developing or not supporting the majority of the people in this city, the majority population who's dealing with the majority of the issues. If you look at maps of homicides over the years, they've always been in the same places. But when you look at, depending on the source that you go to, Baltimore is only between 81 and 93 square miles. But we have the 8th largest police department in the entire country. There's no way that we cannot allocate in a concentrated fashion the resources into the spots that need them the most for the betterment of the people. But see, we're being used. We're being used, and we have to take ownership of allowing ourselves to be used. You don't hire all these police. You don't employ all these police, all these court systems and everything attendant to that without having a boogeyman. So as long as we talk about getting the bag, being on the corner, doing these things, which I understand, I'm not castigating anybody. I'm saying we got to understand the game. We have to understand the game. We're allowing ourselves to be used to demonize our existence, and ultimately remove us from being in that majority demographic category. Like I said, DC is comparing apples to apples. That was Chocolate City and went from over 70% black to now 43% black. And we're trending in that same fashion based on the crime. Now, think about the 80s in DC. And like I said, when Marion Barry was ultimately gotten out of office. But what I employ our white allies to understand is that when Marion Barry improved DC, and he improved it for everybody by focusing on who had the most issues to deal with. And so he didn't just develop DC, and they'll all tell you, PG County is thanks to Marion Barry. Charles County is thanks to Marion Barry. Northern Virginia is thanks to Marion Barry. Baltimore needs a mayor that understands this is the majority of the population. And if the majority of the population is facing the majority of the issues, when we concentrate on them, we will improve the status of the entire body.
So we're trending in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. Well, depending on who you are and how you look at it. Some people.
Well, I mean, I look like you. You look like me. So I'm only looking at it one way.
1000%.
So what needs to happen?
I definitely feel that we need to have a mayor again that is I won't even just focus on the mayor, though it's going to apply to the mayor as well. We need representation that is unapologetically willing to say that. If you notice, people will run on black issues, but they won't run on a black agenda. How are you going to solve the issues if you don't have an agenda? We'll talk about mass incarceration, criminal justice reform, because these are, hot buzzword phrases and all of that stuff. But if you don't have a black agenda, how are you going to solve the black issues? We got to stop, falling for people just referring to us and actually do what needs to be done. Right now in Annapolis, we don't have a concentrated agenda. All of this criminal justice reform talk, but people are still locked into categories of felons or this. Maryland, we just finally, with quite a bit of effort, got the first expungement provision in the history of the state of Maryland. But it's basically ineffective because of another policy that's in place, which could be changed in one session, which is the unit rule. But people won't come together around that issue. We allow them to talk about us, but they won't come talk to us.
How is a predominantly black city and so much black leadership in the state house allow what appears to be the real power, right, in the state house to continue to be non-black?
Say that for me one more time.
We got the Baltimore delegation. We got these senators. We got all of these people that are in the state house, but the concentration of power in those rooms still continue to be non-black. And we had the hardest time getting any black policy agenda across because of the Bobby Zirkins and the guys who don't look like us.
Because we don't fund the campaigns, and then there is the disengagement at the voting booth. So the black turnout isn't there. So the candidates go to who's going to fund them. Let's look at representation overall. Whereas in politics at one time, think about the 40s, the 50s, the Irish, the Italians. Political representation came from working backgrounds, people who understood the conditions because they came from them. Now our political representation comes from nonprofits or teaching backgrounds. I don't knock those at all. I have a nonprofit. I love teachers.
I do.
But we're complaining about the trash on the streets in Baltimore right now. Who actually came up through the ranks of DPW, understands the work, not only the workings of the agency, but the people who work for the agency and can get it done just in that. Let's just focus on that issue of trash in Baltimore City. But when we look at our representation, local or state, we don't have, we just, the actual background, that blue collar working class background has been steadily moved out of politics.
And it's been out of power.
It's also exhibited in how we talk about education. If you notice, which again, love education. I got a 16-year-old daughter who's about to be a senior in high school. But if we only talk about STEM and STEAM, how many children are we marginalizing? Not only because they don't have the aptitude for STEM,
or because of lack of interest.
Exactly. That's almost saying to them, we don't look, we just came through a pandemic, but in that conversation, we're saying we don't need truck drivers. We don't need trash haulers. We know we do. We have to be more well-rounded in our conversations and start to be more inclusive of actual dynamics. Of course, we need doctors and lawyers, but we also need farmers. We also need truck drivers, and we need people who are representatives of those dynamics as well.
Christopher Ervin, man, you brought a wealth of knowledge. As always, you're one of my favorite people to talk to. Before I allow you to have an opportunity to give us a final word, Miss Nika Namdi has been a rock star in the comments tonight. Nika, I need you to commit right now live while I'm on the air that I can call you when I get off here. We're going to get us a date because nobody can have a conversation about the underdevelopment and blight and the gentrification in Baltimore like you will. So I need you to commit while the people are watching that you're going to come on, sit down here and talk to me and have this conversation, Fight Blight Baltimore. All right, with that being said, I'm just waiting for her comment to pop up. But while she's typing her comment, her yes, I hope it is. Chris, I need you to give us your final thoughts.
But first, Marv, I'd like to invite you to join me and Nika on one of our walks. We walked one day, literally walked across the entire city. And at night, I think that you would, boy, this lens is great. Actually makes me look like I'm, wait a minute. But I just had to look at myself.
Look at Shaka, he encouraging and gave you the full screen.
Yeah, but Marv, we walked across the city at night and we were all in the element that you love to be in, where you could, the streets, but just to be able to see it from east to west and engage people and across that dynamic. The word that I would love to leave with the family is just engage intentionally, engage aggressively, engage respectfully, but engage unapologetically. This is your space. There are no Jay-Z's and Beyonce's or LeBrons. Representatives are not celebrities. They're supposed to be servants. They're supposed to be representatives. They're supposed to be one of, not one above. And so engage, and demand.
The same way you committed, I'm committed as well. You let me know when, I'll be there. Y'all know that's my element as well. So Nika, I'm going to put you on the spot again. Our next Unbooked show is August the 19th, 2021. If you put it on the screen right now that you're going to be with us. Ms. Nika Namdi of Fight Blight Baltimore, a powerful sister who is holding everybody accountable to come on and share the great wisdom and knowledge. And you got to say yes, sis, because I'm always getting accused of not having women on there a week after I have a woman on the show. Well, all right, y'all. Y'all heard it here first. On August 19th.
The opportunity to come back. I know I need to get a little Vaseline because this thing is really so tight. This is better than a Zoom. You done got a format better than Zoom and everything else.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's giving us all the details. It's way more broadcast friendly. And really the man, my right hand and my left hand, I'm going to bring them back on the screen on the 1s and 2s, Technique 1200s. No exceptions because anything else is undignified. Come on back with a shot. He is the man that makes the magic happen. I want to say thank you, Mr. Christopher Ervin, for being with us tonight. I also want to say thank you, Shaka, for always doing what you do, man. We're going to have to talk about the trip, man. Give us a little piece of what how the trip went.
The trip was transformative, good brother. So we took 6 youth out to Winter Park, Colorado for the USA Cycling Mountain Bike Championships. And, the first time these kids rode on a gondola up a mountain, the first time these kids sing literally the Purple Mountains. You hear Ray Charles sing about it, right? But they literally got a chance to see the Purple Mountains. And it was just amazing, man. It was amazing to see them open up to something different. We had a brother who told me he found this tribe. He was like, Shaka, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. So
you guys are also able to take some family members too.
Yes, right? So we took the parents as well. So
that's really transformative.
Yeah, transformative.
We talk about not touching the household, man. You guys took it to another level.
Yeah, man. So it was amazing, man. The community kicked in, and we all together between the community and some other organizations, we raised $15,000, man. Between April and the trip was July 11th. So, listen, the community did most of that because those organizations gave we got maybe like $1,000 between the organizations, but the community, the people, they put up, $100, $20, $5, $500. It was just amazing, man. So,
people
thank you.
Powered.
Listen, people power, totally. So thanks. So on behalf of Black People Ride Bikes, on behalf of the Patterson Park girls team, on the Go Hard boys team, we thank the community, man. This is, the work works. The work works. So thank you.
It's awesome, man. So in finalizing, I always say if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? Absolutely, it does. It just was nobody there to hear it. And tonight, along with Miss Nika Namdi, we had some people that hung out in the comments, Miss Manya Smith, Carol Wilson, my godmother, Miss Brenda Jones. You guys always show up and you rock out with us. Continue to show up because I'm going to give you guys a little bit of this rundown for the next few weeks. We got on the 29th, Mr. Ray Kelly is coming. On the 5th, we're going to have Pastor Clay Burston and Pastor Yania Wilkins are coming back, and we're going to have this conversation about these high budgets to try to have a worship service. A lot of it surrounds the musicians. You don't want to miss it. I put out a call to a musician who posts a lot, but you ain't responded yet, brother, to my invitation to come and speak your piece, brother.
Listen, and the good brother Clay wants all that smoke. So please,
all the smoke, all the time.
Let's already know.
Hey, look, Shaka, he invited me to his podcast. He does a podcast with Pastor Dan at Ray, man, and he knew he was gonna get me on there. They was gonna get me worked up and bring the fire. We had an amazing time. So, following that show on the 12th, we are going to sit down and we're going to talk Baltimore consent decree and police reform with one of the most brilliant Black minds in all of law enforcement, or just in the world. Dr. Tyrone Powers is going to be with us on the 12th. And then on the 19th, we bring in my sister, Fight Black Baltimore, the one and the only. And listen, she is never short on what needs to be said. She takes no tea for the fever, and there's no allegiance bigger than truth. So you want to tune in. We're going to be talking to, we booked it right here on the air. First time we've ever done that. Miss Nika Namdi is going to be with y'all. Listen, we booked. We took our little break last week and we on a tear. We book. So we're going to be here. Man, as always, I want to tell you to continue to love Baltimore, love each other, be people powered, and never hesitate to chop it up. You got to keep talking if we're going to continue to walk. We got to understand and embrace ideas over anything adversarial, because when we separate it, we lose power. I love you. Shot, take us home.
I can be more. There's nothing that I can't achieve if I just believe. You can be more. You can make every dream a reality. We can be more. Be more, be more.
Yeah.
I can be more.
I wake up every day and try to be more. I pray I be more. It's easy to achieve anything you believe. Like hold your head high. Girl, you got a reason to breathe. I see a rare mind. Boy, you got a reason to dream. Let's take flight. Give the children a reason to see redemption. We grow up in the jacks where it's evil and wicked. Where the people with success don't want to send you a visit.